If you ever sell someone a Halloween costume and they return it the next day covered in blood, don't ask questions. Just burn it. I learned that lesson working at Spirit Halloween on Route 9 outside Keene, New Hampshire. I was 3 weeks into a seasonal gig that was supposed to pad my bank account before winter really hit. 23 years old, barely making rent on a studio apartment above the pizza place on Main Street, and stupid enough to think a temporary retail job would be easy money during the spookiest month of the year. The store opened in mid-September in the shell of an old grocery mart. You know the type. Fluorescent lights that buzz like angry wasps, concrete floors that echo every footstep, and that specific smell of cardboard and synthetic fabric that makes your sinuses itch. My job was simple enough. Stock shelves, help customers find the right vampire fangs or witch hat, ring up purchases, and try not to lose my mind listening to the Monster Mash on repeat for 8 hours straight. By October 20th, I had the routine down. Morning shift meant unpacking boxes of last-minute inventory. Afternoon meant dealing with parents and their screaming kids who wanted every single animatronic demon in the store. Evening meant the high schoolers coming in to buy fake blood and cheap masks for parties I wasn't invited to. It was mind-numbing work, but it paid $11.50 an hour and didn't require me to think too hard. That changed on October 23rd. It was a Tuesday evening, about an hour before closing. The store was nearly empty except for a middle-aged woman debating between 2 identical witch brooms and a couple giggling over the sexy nurse costumes. I was restocking the clearance bin near the back when I heard the front door chime. I glanced up and saw him. Tall guy, maybe 6'2" or 6'3", wearing a faded Carhartt jacket and jeans caked with dried mud around the cuffs. Work boots that had seen better days. He had one of those faces that's hard to pin an age on. Could have been 35. Could have been 50. Dark hair going gray at the temples. Deep-set eyes. And a week's worth of stubble on his jaw. He walked with his hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, like he was used to making himself smaller in public spaces. Nothing about him screamed danger. He just looked like every other guy from the rural towns outside Keene who came in smelling like wood smoke and motor oil. He made a slow circuit of the store, barely glancing at the mass-produced costumes and plastic decorations. I watched him from the corner of my eye while pretending to organize rubber-severed hands. The way he moved was deliberate, methodical, like he was looking for something specific. After about 5 minutes, he stopped in front of our premium costume section. We kept the higher-end stuff separated from the $15 polyester garbage. These were the costumes that ran anywhere from $80 to $200. Realistic monster masks with silicone skin, full-body suits with articulated features, movie-quality makeup kits, the kind of thing serious Halloween enthusiasts or indie filmmakers would rent or buy. He stood there for a long time, staring at one costume in particular, the Skinwalker. I'd unpacked it myself 2 weeks earlier and honestly thought it was overkill for a Halloween store in small-town New Hampshire. The thing was legitimately unsettling. It wasn't some cartoon wolf man with fake fur and plastic claws. This was a full-body suit made from what looked like real animal pelts stitched together. Coyote, deer, maybe some rabbit fur mixed in. The mask was a hollowed-out coyote skull with preserved teeth and a hinged jaw that moved when you opened your mouth. The eye sockets had amber-colored lenses that caught light in this sick, reflective way. The hands were gloves with articulated bone claws that clicked when you moved your fingers. The whole thing came with a backstory card. Some nonsense about Navajo folklore and evil witches who wore animal skins to transform and hunt people. The manufacturer had gone all in on the authentic angle, and honestly, it looked like something that belonged in a horror movie prop warehouse, not a strip mall Halloween store. The price tag was $179. The guy stared at it for maybe 3 full minutes without moving. I walked over, putting on my customer service voice. "Can I help you find anything?" He didn't look at me right away, just kept staring at the costume. "That one," he said finally. His voice was low, gravelly, like he didn't use it much. "I need that one." "The Skinwalker?" I said. "Yeah, it's a great costume. Really detailed. One of our best sellers this season." That was a lie. Nobody had touched the thing since we put it on display. Most customers thought it was too creepy or too expensive or both. "I'll take it," he said. "Cool. Let me grab the box from the back." I retrieved the packaged version from our stock room and met him at the register. He paid in cash. Exact change. All 20s and 10s. Like he counted it out beforehand. Didn't say a word while I rang him up. Didn't ask about the return policy or if we had any discount codes. Just took the receipt, grabbed the bag, and walked out. The whole interaction lasted maybe 3 minutes. I thought that was the end of it. October 25th, around noon, the guy came back. I was covering the register while my coworker Stephanie went on lunch break. The store was busy. Lots of last-minute shoppers panicking because Halloween was less than a week away and their kids still didn't have costumes. I was in the middle of explaining to a very stressed mother that no, we did not have any more Spider-Man costumes in size small when I saw him walk in. Same jacket, same boots, same blank expression. He was carrying our store bag. He walked straight to the counter, bypassed the line of annoyed customers, and set the bag down in front of me. "I need to return this," he said. I held up a finger to the mom I'd been helping. "Just a second, ma'am." Then to him, "What's the issue with it? Doesn't fit right," he said. I pulled the costume box out of the bag and immediately noticed something was off. The box was damaged. Not like shipping damage. More like it had been opened roughly and shoved back in. The cardboard corners were bent and there were dark smudges on the sides. I opened it up and pulled out the suit. It smelled wrong. Not like body odor or sweat, but something sharper, metallic, organic, like meat, left out too long, and there were stains, dark reddish-brown stains on the fur around the chest and shoulders. The white rabbit fur patches had turned a dingy rust color. The claws had something crusted under the tips. I looked up at him. "Sir, this costume it's damaged. Doesn't fit right," he repeated, not quite meeting my eyes. "No, I mean there's blood on it." He didn't react. Just stared at me with those deep-set eyes, waiting. I felt a prickle of unease crawl up the back of my neck. The store suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too full of people who weren't paying attention. "I can't accept a return if the merchandise is damaged," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Store policy. You sold me a defective product," he said flatly. "I wore it once and it didn't fit. I want my money back." "Sir, this isn't defective. This is contaminated. Did you wear this to a haunted house or something? Because if, give me my refund." His voice didn't rise. He didn't lean forward or make any aggressive moves, but something in his tone made the hair on my arms stand up. I glanced at the line of customers behind him. Most of them were absorbed in their phones or wrangling their kids, but one older woman was watching us with a concerned expression. "Let me get my manager," I said. I called over Greg, the assistant manager, who came out from the back looking annoyed. He took one look at the costume, wrinkled his nose, and immediately agreed to process the return. "Store credit only," Greg said, "and you're going to need to fill out an incident report for damaged merchandise." The guy signed the form without reading it, took his store credit voucher, and left. Greg turned to me. "Jesus Christ. What did he do? Wear that thing to a slaughterhouse?" "I don't know," I said, "but I don't think we should put that back on the floor." "No shit. Bag it up and put it in the dumpster out back." I did. Double bagged it, took it to the loading dock, and threw it into the trash compactor. Then I washed my hands 3 times in the bathroom sink, scrubbing until my skin felt raw. I didn't think about it again until October 27th. I was closing that night with Stephanie, going through the end-of-day routine. Count the register, straighten the aisles, take the trash out, lock the doors. It was almost 10 p.m. and the parking lot was mostly empty except for our cars and a few overnight shoppers at the 24-hour Walmart next door. I was hauling the last trash bag to the dumpster when I saw someone standing near my car. I stopped. The parking lot lights were sodium yellow and flickering, casting everything in this sickly orange glow. The figure was maybe 30 feet away, just standing there next to my beat-up Honda Civic, facing the store, wearing the Skinwalker costume. I felt my stomach drop. The fur was unmistakable. The patchy mix of coyote and deer and rabbit pelts, the bone claws, the hollow-eyed skull mask. It stood perfectly still, hands at its sides, watching me. No, not watching me. Watching the store. I stood there holding the trash bag like an idiot, trying to process what I was seeing. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was some asshole customer who'd bought a different Skinwalker costume and thought it would be funny to screw with the retail workers after closing, but we only had one of those costumes. And I'd thrown it away 2 days ago. I pulled out my phone, ready to call. Who? The cops? Stephanie? My hands were shaking enough that I almost dropped it. The figure's head tilted slightly. Not a human movement. Too smooth, too fluid, like the skull mask was turning on a mechanism. Then it took a step toward me. I dropped the trash bag and ran back inside, locked the door. I said, my voice coming out higher than I intended. Stephanie looked up from the register, confused. What? Lock the door. Now. We're not supposed to lock it until we're actually leaving. There's someone outside, in a costume. Lock the fucking door. She must have heard something in my voice that convinced her, because she hurried over and turned the deadbolt. What are you talking about? Who's outside? I pointed through the glass front doors. The parking lot was empty. My car sat alone under the flickering lights. No figure. No costume. Nothing. Stephanie gave me a look. Are you okay? I saw someone standing by my car, wearing that Skinwalker costume. The one that guy returned. The bloody one. Yeah, Tyler. We threw that thing away. It's in the compactor. I know. But I saw, you've been working too many closing shifts, she said, not unkindly. This place is creepy as hell after dark. Your brain starts seeing things. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just tired and stressed and my mind had conjured up something that wasn't there. It was Halloween season. Everyone was on edge. We finished closing. I walked Stephanie to her car first, making sure she got in safe and locked her doors before she drove off. Then I approached my own car, keys in hand, checking the back seat through the window before I got in. Nothing. I drove home, checking my rearview mirror every 30 seconds, half expecting to see something following me. My apartment was above Grimaldi's Pizza, accessible through an exterior staircase on the side of the building. The stairs were old wood that creaked under every step, and the landing was barely big enough for a doormat and a sad potted plant I kept forgetting to water. I locked the door behind me, checked the bathroom and closet, and collapsed on my couch. It was almost midnight. I sat there in the dark, still in my work clothes, trying to calm down. My phone buzzed. A text from Stephanie. You good? Yeah. I typed back. Just spooked. Sorry for being weird. No worries. Get some sleep. I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch, lights on, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself with mindless videos and social media posts. Every creak of the old building made me flinch. Every car passing on the street below made me get up and check the window. At some point around 2 a.m., I finally felt tired enough to try sleeping. I got up to brush my teeth and caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked like hell. Dark circles under my eyes, hair sticking up in weird directions. 5 o'clock shadow creeping in. That's when I heard it. Scratching. Soft, rhythmic scratching, coming from the other side of my apartment door. I froze. Toothbrush in hand. Toothpaste foam dripping onto my shirt. Scratch. 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 Not frantic or aggressive. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone dragging their fingernails down the wood in a steady pattern. I rinsed my mouth, spit, and quietly walked to the door. My apartment didn't have a peephole, just a cheap hollow core door with a flimsy chain lock that probably wouldn't stop a determined teenager, let alone anything else. I put my ear against the door and listened. The scratching stopped. I held my breath, waiting. Then I heard breathing, slow, raspy breathing, right on the other side of the door. "Hello?" I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. No response. "I'm calling the cops," I said. "Whoever you are, you need to leave." The breathing continued for another 10 seconds. Then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps descending the stairs. Each step made the old wood groan and creak. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, then grabbed my phone and called 911. The dispatcher was professional and calm, asked if I was in immediate danger, if I could describe the person, if they were armed. I explained what happened. The scratching, the breathing, the footsteps. She said an officer would be there in about 15 minutes. I sat on my couch, lights blazing, kitchen knife in one hand and phone in the other, until I heard the knock. Keene Police. I checked through the window first, saw the patrol car's lights flashing in the parking lot, then opened the door. The officer was young, maybe late 20s, with the kind of tired eyes that suggested he'd already dealt with 3 domestic disturbances and a drunk and disorderly tonight. His nameplate read, "Officer Brennan. You called about someone outside your door?" he said. "Yeah, about 20 minutes ago. Someone was scratching on my door and I could hear them breathing. You see who it was?" "No." I didn't open the door. Smart. He glanced at the stairs. "You mind if I take a look around?" Please." He descended the stairs, shining his flashlight around the parking lot, checking behind the dumpster and the bushes along the building's perimeter. I watched from my landing, still holding the kitchen knife. After a few minutes, he came back up. "Nothing out there now," he said. "But I did find these." He angled his flashlight toward my door. There were marks in the wood. 4 parallel scratches, evenly spaced, running from about shoulder height down to the doorknob. Fresh scratches. The wood underneath was pale and splintered. "Jesus," I breathed. "Any chance you know who might have done this? Ex-girlfriend? Angry neighbor?" "No. Nobody." He nodded slowly, taking out a small notepad. "I'm going to file a report for attempted trespassing and property damage. You should probably talk to your landlord about getting a camera installed. Maybe a better lock." "Yeah. Okay." He gave me his card, told me to call if anything else happened, and left. I didn't sleep at all that night. October 28th. I called in sick to work. Greg wasn't happy about it, but I didn't care. I was exhausted, paranoid, and starting to feel like I was losing my mind. I spent most of the day in my apartment, curtains drawn, jumping at every sound. Around 3 p.m., my landlord came by to look at the door. He was a 60-something guy named Frank who owned the whole building and ran Grimaldi's downstairs. He took one look at the scratches and whistled low. "What the hell did this?" he said. "I don't know. I called the police last night. Someone was messing with my door." He ran his fingers over the gouges. "These are deep. Like, really deep. This wasn't done with fingernails. Had to be a tool or something." "What kind of tool?" He shrugged. "Box cutter, maybe. Something sharp. I'll get this door replaced tomorrow. But in the meantime, I'm putting a deadbolt on. Better than that chain lock you've got now." He installed the deadbolt while I made coffee and tried not to think about what could make scratches that deep. By the time Frank left, it was almost 5 p.m. The sun was already setting. That early October dusk that makes everything feel colder and darker than it should. I stood at my kitchen window, looking down at the parking lot, and that's when I saw it again. The figure, standing next to the dumpster. Same costume. Same bone-white skull mask. Same patchy fur and clicking claws. Just standing there, watching my window. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking so bad I could barely unlock it, and called the police again. Different dispatcher this time. I explained what was happening, that I'd called last night, that there was someone in a costume stalking me. She said she'd send a unit. I kept my eyes on the figure while I waited. It didn't move, didn't shift or fidget or do any of the little unconscious movements people make when they're standing still. It just stood there, head tilted slightly upward, staring at my window. 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes. Then I saw the patrol car pull into the parking lot. The figure didn't run, didn't even turn around. It just walked, slow, unhurried steps toward the tree line behind the building. By the time Officer Brennan got out of his car, the figure had disappeared into the shadows. I ran downstairs and met him in the parking lot. "It was right there," I said, pointing toward the trees. "Same person from last night. Same costume. They were watching my apartment." Brennan swept his flashlight across the tree line. "How long ago?" 2 minutes. Maybe less. He radioed for backup and told me to wait by his car while he checked the woods. I stood there in the cold October air, arms wrapped around myself, watching his flashlight bob between the trees. He came back 10 minutes later, shaking his head. "Nobody back there," he said. "But there's an old trail that cuts through to the state forest. If someone wanted to disappear, that'd be the way to do it." "This is the same person from last night," I said. "I know it is. The one who scratched your door?" "Yes." He looked at me for a long moment, and I could see him doing the mental calculation. Was I a reliable witness? Was I exaggerating? Was I making this up? "You said they were wearing a costume," he said carefully. "Like a Halloween costume? It's a skinwalker costume. From my store. I sold it to a guy on October 23rd. He returned it 2 days later because it was covered in blood. I threw it away, but now someone's wearing it and following me." Brennan wrote something in his notepad. "What store do you work at?" "Spirit Halloween. Route 9. And you have the guy's name? The one who bought the costume?" "No. He paid cash. We didn't get his information." "What'd he look like?" I described him. Tall, dark hair going gray, work jacket, boots, dead eyes. Brennan nodded. "I'll talk to your manager tomorrow, see if we can pull security footage. In the meantime, you should stay somewhere else tonight. Friend's place, maybe? Hotel?" "I can't afford a hotel." "Then call someone. Because whoever this is, they know where you live, and they're not being subtle about it." He was right. I knew he was right. I called my friend Jake, a guy I'd gone to high school with who still lived in the area. He said I could crash on his couch, no questions asked. I packed a bag, locked my apartment, and drove across town with my high beams on and one eye glued to the rearview mirror. Jake's place was a small ranch house he rented with 2 other guys. It smelled like weed and pizza, and the furniture looked like it'd been salvaged from a college dorm, but I'd never been so grateful for a safe place to sleep. "Dude, you look like hell," Jake said, passing me a beer. I told him everything. The customer, the costume, the figure outside my work, the scratches on my door, the police. He listened without interrupting, which was one of the reasons I called him. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "So you think this guy is stalking you because you threw away his Halloween costume?" I know how it sounds. It sounds insane. But also, I believe you. You're not the type to make shit up. Thanks. You think he's dangerous? I don't know. But those scratches on my door, Officer Brennan said they were really deep. Like, unnaturally deep. Jake took a long pull from his beer. What if it's not the guy? What do you mean? What if it's the costume? I stared at him. I'm serious, he said. You said it was a skinwalker costume, right? And skinwalkers are, like, evil witches who turn into animals and hunt people. What if the costume is, I don't know, cursed or some shit? Jake, I'm just saying. You threw it away and then it showed up again. That's not normal. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't, because nothing about this was normal. I slept on Jake's couch that night, or tried to. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure in the parking lot, standing motionless under the flickering lights. October 29th. I went back to work. I didn't want to, but I needed the money and I couldn't hide forever. Greg had already called me twice about the police showing up to review security footage, and I figured I owed him an explanation. When I arrived, Officer Brennan was standing in Greg's office, watching the grainy black and white feed from our security cameras. I joined them, and Brennan rewound the footage to October 23rd. There he was, the guy, walking in, going straight to the costume, buying it without hesitation. You recognize him? Brennan asked. That's him, I said. We watched the footage from October 25th, the return. Brennan paused it when the guy set the bag on the counter, zooming in on his face. Can you send me this footage? Brennan asked Greg. Yeah, but I don't know if it'll help. Guy paid cash, didn't give us his name. Maybe someone else recognizes him. Brennan turned to me. You working today? Yeah, closing shift. Call me if anything happens. Anything, I nodded. The shift was brutal. Every time the door chimed, I flinched. Every tall guy in a jacket made my heart race. Stephanie noticed and asked if I was okay, but I just told her I was tired. Around 8 p.m., a kid came up to the register holding the empty display box for the Skinwalker costume. Excuse me, the kid said. Do you have any more of these? I stared at the box. We're sold out, I said. Are you sure? The website says this location has one in stock. I'm sure. The kid frowned, but eventually wandered off to find something else. I checked our inventory system. It showed 0 units of the Skinwalker costume in stock. Hadn't shown any since I threw it away, so why had the website said we had one? I called Greg over and showed him the screen. He looked just as confused as I was and promised to call corporate to fix the glitch, but I didn't think it was a glitch. I think something was wrong with that costume from the beginning. At 10 p.m., Stephanie and I started closing. I offered to take out the trash again, and she gave me a look. Are you sure? After what happened last time, I'll be fine. Just stay inside until I'm done. I hauled the trash bags out to the dumpster, moving fast, trying not to look at the dark corners of the parking lot. The sodium lights flickered and buzzed overhead. I threw the bags in, closed the dumpster lid, and turned around. The figure was standing 10 feet away. I didn't scream, didn't run. I just froze. It stood there in the Skinwalker costume, bone claws hanging at its sides, hollow skull mask reflecting the orange light. The fur looked matted and dirty, darker than I remembered. What do you want? I said, my voice cracking. It tilted its head, then it raised one hand and pointed at me. Not at the store, not at the dumpster, at me. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. Stay away from me. It took a step forward, then another, slow, deliberate. Each step perfectly measured. I turned and ran for the door, fumbling with my keys, hands shaking so bad I dropped them. I scooped them up, unlocked the door, and practically fell inside. Lock it, I shouted at Stephanie. Lock the door right now. She did. and we both pressed our faces against the glass, staring out into the parking lot. The figure stood where I'd left it, 10 feet from the dumpster, pointing at the store. Then it lowered its hand and walked toward the tree line. Stephanie called the police while I sat on the floor, back against the checkout counter, trying to breathe. Officer Brennan arrived 15 minutes later with another officer. They searched the parking lot and the woods behind the building but found nothing. "Tyler," Brennan said, crouching down to my level, "I need you to be honest with me. Is there any chance you know who this person is? Any reason someone would target you specifically?" "No. I don't know why this is happening. What about the customer who bought the costume? Could he have a grudge against you for refusing the return?" "I didn't refuse it. My manager processed it. But you were the one who told him it was damaged, right?" Yeah, but maybe he took that personally. This isn't about a damaged costume," I said. "There's something wrong with it." "Something really wrong." Brennan exchanged a glance with the other officer. I could see what they were thinking. I sounded crazy. "Look," Brennan said carefully, "we're going to keep an eye on this place for the next few nights, and I strongly suggest you don't work any more closing shifts until we figure out what's going on." I nodded. Greg drove me to Jake's place that night. I couldn't stop shaking the entire way. October 30th. Halloween Eve. I didn't go to work. I didn't leave Jake's house. I sat on his couch, scrolling through articles about Skinwalker lore, trying to understand what I was dealing with. Most of it was the same tourist trap bullshit. Scary stories about witches and shapeshifters and cursed creatures. But buried in the noise, I found a few threads from people who claimed to have real experiences. One post caught my attention. "If you think you're being followed by a skinwalker, the only way to stop it is to destroy what it's attached to. They don't have their own form. They need something to inhabit. Burn the skin, burn the bones, burn everything." I thought about the costume, the blood-stained fur, the hollow skull mask, the bone claws. What if Jake was right? What if the costume itself was the problem? I called Officer Brennan. "I need to go back to the store," I said. "I need to check the dumpster." "Tyler, we all ready, please. I think the costume is still there. I think that's what this is about," he sighed. "I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. Jake drove me. We pulled into the Spirit Halloween parking lot just after noon, and Brennan's patrol car was already waiting. "This better not be a waste of time," Brennan said. We walked around to the dumpster. I lifted the lid and stared inside. It was full of trash bags, cardboard boxes, and broken decorations. "Help me look," I said. Brennan and Jake exchanged glances but climbed in with me. We tore through the garbage, pulling out bags and boxes, checking every inch of the compactor. Nothing. No costume. No blood-stained fur. No bone mask. "It's not here," I said. "Maybe the trash got picked up," Jake offered. "No. Pickup isn't until Friday." Brennan wiped his hands on his pants. "Tyler, I think you need to accept the possibility that someone took the costume out of the trash. Maybe the same person who's been following you, or maybe it left on its own," I said. Brennan didn't respond to that. That night, Halloween, I stayed at Jake's place with all the doors locked and the lights on. Jake and his roommates tried to cheer me up with horror movies and cheap beer, but I couldn't focus. Around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No words. Just a photo. I opened it. It was a picture of my apartment door, taken from the landing. The new deadbolt Frank had installed was visible in the frame. My blood went cold. "Jake," I said, "we need to go. Now." We drove across town, going 15 over the speed limit. Jake's knuckles white on the steering wheel. I called Officer Brennan on the way, and he said he'd meet us there. When we pulled into the parking lot, I saw it immediately. My apartment door was open, not kicked in. Not broken, just open. The deadbolt was still intact, sitting on the landing next to a pile of wood shavings. It had been unscrewed from the inside. Brennan arrived with 2 other officers. They cleared my apartment while Jake and I waited in the parking lot. Clear. One of them called out after a few minutes. I went upstairs. My apartment looked normal. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, except for one thing. On my kitchen table, laid out carefully, was the Skinwalker costume, the fur, the mask, the claws, all of it clean, dry, no blood, no stains, and next to it written in something dark on a piece of paper were 2 words, "Thank you." Officer Brennan stared at it for a long time. "We're taking this into evidence," he said finally. "And you're not staying here tonight." They bagged the costume and the note. I packed another bag and left with Jake. I didn't go back to that apartment. Frank let me out of my lease early after I explained what happened. I moved 2 towns over, started working at a grocery store, and deleted my social media. I never found out who the guy was. The police ran the security footage through facial recognition and came up empty. No record, no ID, no name. Officer Brennan called me once in mid-November to tell me they'd sent the costume to a lab for analysis. They found animal, DNA, coyote, deer, rabbit, just like I thought. But they also found human DNA. 3 different people. None of them matched anyone in the system. The case went cold after that. I still think about it sometimes. Late at night, when I'm closing up at the grocery store, I'll catch myself checking the parking lot, looking for a figure in patchy fur and a bone mask. I haven't seen it since Halloween, but I know it's still out there. And if you ever work retail during Halloween season, and someone tries to return a costume covered in blood, do yourself a favor. Don't ask questions. Just burn it. And one more thing. If you've got a story like mine, or if you've seen something you can't explain, leave a comment below. You're not alone. None of us are. And if you want to hear more stories like this, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, this wasn't the only weird thing I've seen working late-night retail. Stay safe out there. I was holding my daughter's hand running for the car when I heard her voice behind me screaming, "Daddy, that's not me." I'm a single father of 2. Well, not single exactly. Divorced going on 3 years now. But I have my kids every other weekend and most holidays. My son Ethan is 8. My daughter Sophie just turned 6 in September. And I'd been planning this pumpkin patch trip for 2 weeks because I wanted to be the fun parent for once. Their mother gets to be the stable one, the responsible one, the one with the nice house and the steady nursing job at the hospital. I get a 2-bedroom apartment that smells like the Thai restaurant downstairs and every other Saturday where I try too hard to make memories. So when Sophie asked if we could go pick pumpkins at a real farm instead of the grocery store parking lot, I said yes immediately. I should have just bought the damn pumpkins at Stop and Shop. This was mid-October, 2024. A Saturday. One of those perfect fall days where the air is crisp, but the sun is warm and every tree looks like it's on fire with orange and red leaves. I picked the kids up from their mom's place in Scranton around 10 in the morning, and we headed northwest into the hills of rural Pennsylvania. I'd found the place online. Slate Run Hollow Farm. 5-star reviews. Family-owned. Authentic, old-fashioned pumpkin patch experience. The website had photos of kids running through corn mazes and families loading wagons with pumpkins in a big red barn that looked like something out of a postcard. It was about an hour's drive from Scranton, up into the mountains where the towns get smaller and the cell service gets worse. Ethan spent most of the drive playing games on his tablet. Sophie sat in her booster seat, narrating everything she saw out the window. "Look, Daddy. Cows. I see them, sweetie. Look, Daddy. A red barn. Yep. Very red. Look, Daddy. A dead deer." I glanced in the rearview mirror. Sure enough, there was a deer carcass in the ditch, bloated and covered in flies. Don't look at that, Sophie. Look at the pretty trees instead. She pressed her face against the window. Why is it dead? Probably got hit by a car. Is it sleeping? No, honey. It's dead. That's different. Oh. She thought about this for a moment. Can we get pumpkin pie at the farm? Maybe. The GPS took us off the main highway and onto increasingly narrow roads. 2-lane state routes became 1-lane county roads, became gravel paths with grass growing down the middle. I started to wonder if I'd typed the address wrong, but the GPS kept insisting I was going the right way. Are we lost? Ethan asked, looking up from his tablet. No, just rural. It smells like poop out here. That's called farm smell, buddy. It's natural. It's gross. Finally, around 3:30 in the afternoon, I saw a hand-painted sign nailed to a fence post. Slate Run Hollow Farm, pumpkins, corn maze, cider. I turned onto a dirt driveway that wound through a field of dried corn stalks. The driveway opened into a gravel parking area in front of a large red barn. There were a few picnic tables, some hay bales arranged decoratively, and a smaller shed with a sign that said Farm Store. The place looked exactly like the photos online, except it was completely empty. No cars, no families, no other people at all. I checked my phone. 3:37 p.m. on a Saturday in mid-October. This should have been peak season, packed with families and school groups. Instead, it was just us. Where is everyone? Ethan asked. Maybe we're early, I said, though I didn't believe it. We got out of the truck. The air smelled like wood smoke and rotting leaves and that sweet, earthy smell of pumpkins. Crows were calling from the trees. The only other sound was the wind moving through the corn stalks. This place is cool, Sophie said, running toward the hay bales. Stay where I can see you, I called after her. I looked around, trying to get my bearings. The barn was to our left, the farm store to our right, and directly ahead was a massive pumpkin field stretching out for maybe 2 acres. Beyond that was a corn maze, the stalks brown and dried out, perfect for October, and throughout the field, standing like sentries, were scarecrows, a lot of scarecrows. I counted 5 just from where I was standing. Traditional ones, stick frames dressed in flannel shirts and denim overalls, burlap sacks for heads with button eyes and stitched mouths. Some were holding pitchforks, some had their arms stretched out like they were directing traffic. One near the barn was wearing a straw hat and had a carved pumpkin for a head instead of burlap. Can we pick pumpkins now? Sophie asked, tugging on my jacket. Let's find the owner first. Make sure it's okay. We walked toward the farm store. The door was propped open with a cinder block and a small chalkboard sign out front read, Welcome, Honor System, Leave Payment, in box. Inside, the store was cramped and dim, shelves lined with jars of honey and apple butter, bundles of Indian corn hanging from the ceiling, a glass front cooler humming in the corner with jugs of cider and containers of pre-cut pumpkin chunks. There was a wooden counter with an old-fashioned cash register and a metal lockbox with a slot in the top for payments. No one was behind the counter. Hello? I called out. No answer. There was a door behind the counter, slightly ajar, leading to what looked like a back room or office. I could see part of a desk and some filing cabinets. Hello? Anyone here? Still nothing. Maybe they're out in the field, Ethan suggested. Maybe. Sophie was already wandering toward the back door. Daddy, someone's in there. Sophie, wait. She pushed the door open wider and peered inside. The man wants to show me something. I crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed her shoulder. What man? She pointed at the empty doorway. That man. I looked. There was no one there. Just a cramped office with a cluttered desk. Some photos on the wall. a coat hanging on a hook. Sophie, there's no one in there. Yes, there is. He's wearing a hat. A chill crawled up the back of my neck. I pulled her away from the door and closed it. Come on, let's go look at the pumpkins. We left the store and headed toward the field. I kept glancing back at the barn and the store, expecting someone to emerge and greet us, but no one did. The pumpkin field was beautiful, I'll give it that. Rows and rows of fat orange pumpkins sitting in the dirt, vines twisting everywhere, bees buzzing lazily around the dying plants. Sophie ran ahead, squealing with delight every time she found a particularly round or large pumpkin. This one. Daddy, that's a good one. No, wait, this one. Ethan was more practical, methodically examining pumpkins for soft spots and bad stems. He was his mother's son. Careful, thoughtful, always thinking 3 steps ahead. I pulled out my phone to take a picture of them, and that's when I noticed I had no signal. Not even 1 bar. Just a little no service message in the corner. Great. I pocketed the phone and focused on the kids. They were happy, laughing, covered in dirt. This was exactly what I'd wanted. A real memory. Something they'd talk about for years. Dad, look at this one. Ethan called. He was standing next to a massive pumpkin, easily 50 pounds. Can we get it? If you can carry it to the truck, I'll help him. Sophie volunteered, even though she probably weighed less than the pumpkin. While they strategized how to move their prize, I glanced around the field. The scarecrows were positioned at regular intervals, one every 30 feet or so, all facing different directions. Most of them looked handmade, the kind of thing you'd expect at a family farm. Mismatched clothes, crude features, that amateur charm. But one of them caught my attention. It was near the barn, maybe 40 feet from where we were standing. Dressed in denim overalls and a red flannel shirt, with a burlap sack head and button eyes. Its arms were outstretched, like it was welcoming people to the farm. What bothered me was the detail. The overalls fit perfectly, like they'd been tailored. The flannel shirt had all its buttons. The burlap face had been carefully stitched with black thread, creating a neutral expression. Not smiling, not frowning, just waiting. And it was facing us. I'm sure it was facing us, because I remember thinking it looked like it was watching my kids. Daddy, that one looks sad, Sophie said, pointing at the same scarecrow. Why do you think it's sad? Because it doesn't have a mouth smile. Just a straight mouth. That's called a neutral expression, sweetie. It's not happy or sad. I think it's sad, she insisted. Okay. Well, it's just a scarecrow. It can't actually feel anything. She looked at me with those big 6-year-old eyes, the ones that always made me feel like I was failing some invisible parenting test. How do you know? I didn't have a good answer for that. We spent the next 20 minutes picking pumpkins. Sophie found 3 that she absolutely needed, each one smaller than the last. Ethan stuck with his giant one, and I grabbed a couple medium-sized ones for carving. We loaded them into an old wooden wagon we found near the field entrance and dragged it back toward the truck. As we passed the barn, I noticed something. The scarecrow in the red flannel. The one Sophie said looked sad. It wasn't facing us anymore. It was facing the barn. I stopped, staring at it. What's wrong? Ethan asked. Nothing. Just... that scarecrow moved. What do you mean? I mean, it was facing the field before. Now it's facing the barn. Ethan looked at it, then at me. Dad, scarecrows don't move. I know that. I'm saying someone must have repositioned it. Why would they do that? I don't know. Maybe it fell over, but it didn't look like it had fallen over. It looked like it had deliberately turned 90 degrees to face a different direction. Can we go to the corn maze? Sophie asked. Please? I checked my phone. 4:07 p.m. The sun was still high, plenty of daylight left, and the kids were having fun. I didn't want to cut the day short just because I was being paranoid about scarecrows. Okay, but just for a little while. We need to leave before it gets dark. The corn maze entrance was marked by 2 tall posts with a wooden sign hanging between them. Slate Run Hollow Corn Maze. Enter if you dare. Very original. The maze itself was a classic autumn setup. Narrow paths cut through the dried corn stalks, the plants towering over our heads, creating walls that rustled and whispered in the wind. There was a map posted at the entrance showing the layout, but Sophie insisted we didn't need it. It's more fun if you get lost, she said. It's more fun if we don't die in a corn maze, I countered, but she was already running inside. Ethan and I followed. The maze was actually pretty well designed. Lots of twists and turns, dead ends, branching paths. The kind of thing that would be genuinely challenging for kids without being scary. The afternoon sun filtered through the dry stalks, casting everything in a golden light. We'd been walking for maybe 5 minutes when I heard it, singing, a child's voice, high and sweet, singing a lullaby. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. I stopped walking. That song. I knew that song. My mother used to sing it to me when I was a kid. Not just the first verse, but all the verses, including the weird ones about looking glasses and billy goats. She'd sing it when I couldn't sleep, her voice soft and patient, and I'd always fall asleep before she got to the end. Do you guys hear that? I asked. Ethan frowned. Hear what? The singing. Sophie tilted her head, listening. I hear it. You do? Uh-huh. It's a girl singing. I listened again. The voice was coming from somewhere ahead of us, deeper in the maze, and if that mockingbird don't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. Let's go find it, Sophie said, starting down the path. Sophie. Wait. But she was already running ahead, following the voice. Ethan and I hurried after her. The singing continued, always just out of sight, always one turn ahead. We followed it through the maze, taking lefts and rights, doubling back when we hit dead ends, and then the singing stopped. We came around a corner and found ourselves in a small clearing in the middle of the maze. The corn had been cleared away here, creating a circle maybe 15 feet across. In the center was a scarecrow. This one was different from the others. It was small, child-sized, dressed in a faded blue dress and white tights. Its burlap head was topped with a straw hat, and someone had painted a face on the burlap. Rosy cheeks, closed eyes, a small smile. It looked like a little girl. Sophie walked up to it, fascinated. She's pretty. She's pretty. Don't touch it, I said automatically. Why not? Because it's not ours. But she's singing. No, sweetie. Scarecrows can't sing. We probably just heard someone's radio or something. Sophie looked at me like I was the dumbest person alive. I heard her. Daddy. She was singing the bird song. I was about to argue when Ethan grabbed my arm. Dad, look. He was pointing at the edge of the clearing. There were more scarecrows, 5 of them, positioned around the perimeter of the circle, all facing inward, all watching the little girl scarecrow in the center. I felt the hair on my arms stand up. Okay, time to go. But now, Sophie. I took her hand and we left the clearing, moving fast. I picked a direction at random and kept walking until we found an exit. The whole time, I felt like something was watching us. Like those scarecrows had turned their heads to follow us as we left. We emerged from the maze on the far side, near the parking area. My truck was still there, sitting alone in the gravel lot. Can we get hot cider? Ethan asked. I wanted to say no. I wanted to load the pumpkins in the truck and leave immediately. But the kids were thirsty and I didn't want to scare them with my paranoia. Okay, quick stop at the store. Then we're leaving. We walked back to the farm store. The door was still propped open, the interior still empty. Hello? I called again. No answer. There was a handwritten price list on the counter. Cider was $3 a cup. I pulled out a $10 bill and dropped it in the lockbox, then opened the cooler and grabbed 3 cups of cider. "Daddy, the man wants to show me something," Sophie said. I spun around. She was standing near the back door again, the one leading to the office. "Sophie, stop it. There's no man." "Yes, there is. He's right there." She pointed at the empty doorway. I set the cider down and walked over, gently pulling her away. "There's nobody there, sweetie. Your eyes are playing tricks, but he's wearing a hat just like yours." I was wearing a baseball cap. Yankees. I'd owned it for 10 years. "What kind of hat?" "A blue hat with a letter." A cold feeling settled in my chest. "Come on. We're leaving." I grabbed the cider, handed the cups to the kids, and ushered them outside. The sun was lower now, maybe an hour from sunset. Long shadows stretched across the field, and that's when Ethan said it. "Dad, there are more scarecrows." I looked at the field. He was right. When we'd arrived, I counted 5 scarecrows. Now there were at least 8, maybe more. They were positioned throughout the pumpkin field, standing silent and still among the vines. "Those weren't there before," Ethan said. "Maybe we just didn't see them." "No. I counted them when we got here. There were 5. Now there's a lot more." I scanned the field, trying to convince myself he was wrong. But I'd seen 5 too. I was sure of it. "Let's go," I said. "Get in the truck." We hurried across the gravel lot. I pulled my keys from my pocket, unlocked the truck, and the kids climbed into the back seat. I started loading the pumpkins into the bed, working fast, glancing up at the field every few seconds. The scarecrows stood motionless, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were closer than before. I loaded the last pumpkin and slammed the tailgate shut. "Buckle up." I climbed into the driver's seat, shoved the key in the ignition, and turned it. Click. Nothing. I tried again. Click. 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 The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. The battery was fine. The dashboard lights were on. The radio came on, but the engine wouldn't start. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked. "I don't know. Probably just flooded. Give it a second." I waited 30 seconds, then tried again. Click. 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 "Daddy, they're closer," Sophie said quietly. I looked up at the field. She was right. The scarecrows had moved. Not by much. Maybe 10 feet closer to the parking area, but they definitely moved. All of them, 8 scarecrows, all facing the truck now, all standing in a rough semicircle. "Dad, what's going on?" Ethan's voice was shaking. "It's fine. They're just scarecrows. Someone's probably messing with us." "Who?" "I don't know. The owner. It's probably some kind of haunted farm thing, but I didn't believe that. I tried the truck again. Same result. The engine turned over, coughed, died. Okay, new plan. I'm going to find the owner and get some help. You two stay in the truck. Keep the doors locked." "No!" Sophie grabbed my arm. "Don't leave us. I'll be right back. I promise. Just stay here and don't open the doors for anyone except me." I climbed out, locked the doors behind me, and ran toward the barn. The big sliding door on the front was closed now. I was sure it had been open when we arrived. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Locked. I ran around to the side, looking for another entrance. There was a regular door near the back, also locked. "Hello!" I shouted, pounding on the door. "Is anyone here? We need help." No response. I heard a sound behind me and spun around. One of the scarecrows was walking toward me, not falling, not being blown by the wind. Walking. Its movements were stiff and jerky, like a marionette with tangled strings. Arms swinging at odd angles, legs bending wrong at the knees. The burlap face was expressionless, button eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. It was maybe 30 feet away. I ran. I sprinted back to the truck, fumbling with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped them. I unlocked the door and dove inside, slamming it shut and locking it again. Both kids were crying. "Daddy, what's happening?" Sophie sobbed. "I don't know, baby, but we're okay. We're safe in the truck." Through the windshield, I watched the Scarecrow stop about 10 feet from the vehicle. It stood there, swaying slightly, its head tilted to one side. Then the others started moving, all 8 of them. Slow, deliberate steps, converging on the truck from different directions. "We need to run," Ethan said. "We need to run right now." He was right. "Okay. When I say go, we're going to run for the road. Stay together, stay close to me, and don't stop for anything. Understand?" They both nodded, wide-eyed and terrified. I took a deep breath. "Go." We burst out of the truck and ran. I grabbed Sophie's hand with my right hand, keeping my left free for balance. Ethan ran beside us, his legs pumping hard. We bolted across the gravel parking area and into the pumpkin field, weaving between the vines and the pumpkins. Behind us, I could hear the Scarecrow's heavy, dragging footsteps, the rustle of fabric, the creak of wood and straw. "Don't look back," I shouted. "Just run." We ran toward the property line, toward the old stone wall that marked the edge of the farm. Beyond that was the dirt driveway, and beyond that was the main road. If we could just get to the road, we'd be safe. Someone would drive by. Someone would help us. We were maybe 50 feet from the wall when I realized something was wrong. Sophie's hand felt strange in mine, too cold, too stiff. The fingers were too long, the grip too tight. I glanced down. The hand I was holding wasn't Sophie's hand. It was a hand made of burlap and straw. Stitched fingers wrapped around mine, sewn-on thumb pressing into my palm. I looked up at the figure running beside me. It was a Scarecrow, dressed in Sophie's clothes. Her pink jacket, her jeans, her sneakers. But the face was burlap, button eyes, stitched smile. Behind me, I heard Sophie's voice. "Daddy, that's not me." I screamed and ripped my hand away, stumbling backward, falling into the dirt. The Scarecrow Sophie stopped running. It turned to face me, tilting its head, and when it spoke, it used my daughter's voice perfectly. "Where are we going, Daddy?" I scrambled to my feet and spun around. 20 feet back, Ethan was pulling the real Sophie toward me. She was crying, reaching for me with both hands. "Sophie." I ran to her, scooped her up, checked her face, her hands, made sure it was really her. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm scared, Daddy." "I know, baby. I know. We're leaving right now." I grabbed Ethan's hand, held Sophie tight against my chest, and we ran. The Scarecrow Sophie didn't follow. It just stood there in the field, waving goodbye with its burlap hand. Behind it, the other Scarecrows had stopped moving. They stood in a line, watching us leave, like spectators at a race. We reached the stone wall and climbed over it. My legs were shaking, my lungs burning. Sophie was sobbing into my shoulder. Ethan was pale and silent. We ran down the dirt driveway, not stopping until we reached the main road, the paved road, the real world. I set Sophie down and collapsed onto the gravel shoulder, gasping for breath. Both kids huddled against me, and we sat there for a long time, just breathing. A few minutes later, headlights appeared. An old pickup truck slowed down and pulled over. The window rolled down, revealing an elderly couple, the man driving, the woman in the passenger seat. They looked concerned. "You folks okay?" the man asked. "Our car broke down," I said. my voice raw. Back at the farm, we need help. What farm? Slate Run Hollow. Just up the road. The couple exchanged glances. Son, there's no farm up that road, the woman said gently. Hasn't been one for years. No, it's right there. The pumpkin patch. We were just there. You want us to drive you back and take a look? I hesitated. Every instinct told me not to go back. But my truck was there. My keys, my wallet, everything. Yes, please. The couple insisted the kids ride in the cab while I sat in the truck bed. We drove back up the dirt road, following my directions. When we reached the entrance to Slate Run Hollow Farm, I stood up in the truck bed and stared. The farm was gone. The barn was still there, but it was a ruin. Half the roof had collapsed. The red paint had peeled away to bare gray wood. The windows were broken. The farm store was just a shed with a caved-in door. The pumpkin field was overgrown with weeds and wild grass, and my truck was there, sitting in the middle of the overgrown parking area, covered in dust and dead leaves like it had been there for months. The old man stopped his truck and we all got out. "This is the place?" he asked. It was different, I said. There were pumpkins, and scarecrows, and a store. The woman put a hand on my arm. This place has been abandoned since 2009. Old man who owned it died out here alone. They say he went a little crazy toward the end, talked to his scarecrows like they were real people. I walked toward my truck in a daze. The doors were unlocked. My keys were still in the ignition. I turned the key. The engine started immediately. Smooth. Perfect. Like nothing had ever been wrong. "Daddy, I want to go home," Sophie said quietly. "Me too, baby." I thanked the couple, loaded the kids into my truck, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw something, just for a second. Standing at the edge of the property, right at the stone wall boundary, was a scarecrow, wearing a red flannel shirt and denim overalls, waving. I didn't stop driving until we were back in Scranton. The next day, I filed a report with the local police. A deputy came to my apartment and took my statement. He listened patiently, wrote everything down, and then told me what I already knew. Slate Run Hollow Farm closed in 2009, sir. Owner's name was Jeremiah Crawley. Died of a heart attack. His family found him 3 days later, lying in his pumpkin field. The scarecrows were arranged in a circle around him. Some folks say he'd been dead for nearly a week, but the scarecrows kept the animals away from his body. Did anyone ever figure out why? I asked. The deputy shook his head. "No, sir. But people around here, they don't go out to that property anymore. Even teenagers on dares. Something about it doesn't feel right." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I noticed. I never took my kids back to a pumpkin patch. Not that year, not any year after. Sophie still has nightmares sometimes. She wakes up crying, saying the scarecrows are in her room, saying they're calling her name. Ethan doesn't talk about it at all. But I've noticed he won't go near Halloween decorations anymore. If we drive past a house with scarecrows in the yard, he closes his eyes. And me? I can't stop thinking about that moment in the field, when I looked down at the hand I was holding and realized it wasn't my daughter's hand. How long had I been holding it? How far had I walked with that thing pretending to be Sophie? And the worst thought, the one that keeps me awake at night, what if I hadn't noticed? What if I'd kept running, kept holding that burlap hand, and left my real daughter behind in that field? Would they have taken her place permanently? Would I have driven home with a scarecrow in a car seat, brought it into my apartment, tucked it into bed? Would I have ever known the difference? I don't have answers to those questions. I don't want answers. But I'll tell you this. If you take your kids to a pumpkin patch and you're the only family there on a Saturday in October, leave. Don't ask why it's empty. Don't wait for an explanation. Just leave. And if your child says a scarecrow is talking to them, believe them, because some things that look like they're just standing still in a field aren't just standing still. They're waiting. And if you found this story helpful, or if it reminded you to trust your instincts when something feels wrong, leave a comment below. Share your own weird experiences. Let me know I'm not crazy. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about the things we encounter when we're just trying to make memories with our families, hit that subscribe button, because I've got more. And trust me, they don't get any easier to talk about. Stay safe out there. And if you see a scarecrow that's just a little too detailed, a little too lifelike, don't turn your back on it. The figures in animal masks were 10 feet behind me when I hit the riverbank. Jump or get caught. Drown or disappear. I had 3 seconds to decide. My name is Owen Bridger. I'm 32 years old. I work as a software engineer in Albany, and I've been hiking the Adirondacks since I was 15. I know these mountains. I know how to read a map, how to filter water, how to hang a bear bag, how to navigate by compass when the trail markers disappear. I've summited 46 of the high peaks, camped through thunderstorms and early snow, and never once needed to activate my emergency beacon. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand I'm not some rookie who panicked in the woods. I'm not someone who gets lost easily or sees things that aren't there. But I can't explain what happened to me on October 30th, 2024. I left Albany around noon that day. It was a Wednesday, middle of the week, and I'd taken a personal day from work specifically for this hike. The forecast was perfect. Clear skies, cold overnight temps in the low 30s, no precipitation. I wanted one last solo overnight trip before winter really set in and the trails became impassable. I chose the old military trail in the Sentinel Range wilderness. It's not one of the famous peaks, not crowded, not Instagram worthy. Just a solid 4.8-mile hike to a summit clearing with a decent campsite. The kind of place where you can sit by a fire, drink instant coffee, and not see another human being for 12 hours. My truck hit the trailhead parking area around 2 p.m. There were 2 other vehicles, a Honda CR-V with Massachusetts plates and an old Subaru covered in environmental bumper stickers. Day hikers, probably. The lot was gravel, surrounded by dense forest, with a weathered wooden sign marking the trail entrance. I did my pre-hike check: tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, bear canister with 3 days of food, water filter, 2 liters of water, first aid kit, headlamp with extra batteries, paper map, compass, emergency beacon, phone in a waterproof case. I was wearing layers: moisture-wicking base layer, fleece mid-layer, wind-resistant outer shell, good boots, broken in, waterproofed last month. I signed the trail register. Name, date, intended destination, expected return. Standard protocol. The last entry before mine was from 2 days earlier. A couple from Vermont doing a day hike. Before that, nothing for almost a week. I shouldered my pack and started hiking. The trail was in good condition. Well-worn dirt path, clearly marked with faded metal blazes nailed to trees every 100 feet or so. Some of those blazes were old. Really old. I passed one with a date stamped into the metal: 1963. The old military trail had been around since the early 19th century, used by soldiers moving supplies between outposts. Later it became a logging road, then eventually a recreational trail. The forest was quiet. Late October in the Adirondacks means most of the fall color is gone. The maples and oaks had already dropped their leaves, leaving bare branches against the gray sky. The evergreens were dark green, almost black in the afternoon light. The ground was covered in a thick layer of brown leaves that crunched under my boots. I saw a few birds. Heard a squirrel chittering somewhere off trail. Noticed some deer tracks in a muddy section near a stream crossing. Normal stuff. Peaceful. Around 3 p.m., I passed 2 hikers coming down. A man and a woman, both in their 50s, wearing matching fleece jackets and carrying small day packs. "How's the trail up ahead?" I asked. "Beautiful," the woman said. "Clear all the way to the top." "You camping overnight?" "Yeah. Summit clearing." The man nodded. "Nice. Should have it to yourself. We didn't see anyone else up there. You heading back down now?" "Yep. Want to be off the mountain before dark. Standard advice. Nobody wants to navigate a trail after sunset, even with a headlamp." I wished them a good hike and kept moving. The trail got steeper after the 3-mile mark. My legs burned. My pack felt heavier. And I started doing the mental math I always do on solo hikes. If I maintain this pace, I'll reach camp by 5:30. That gives me an hour of daylight to set up the tent, hang the bear canister, gather firewood, and start water boiling. Eat dinner by 7. Relax by the fire until 10 or 11. Then sleep. Simple. Familiar. Safe. I reached the summit, clearing at 5:43 p.m. The clearing was exactly as I remembered from the last time I'd been here. 3 years ago, maybe 4. A flat area about 50 feet across, surrounded by spruce and pine trees. Old stone fire ring in the center, blackened from hundreds of campfires. A few fallen logs positioned around the fire ring like benches. Good tent sites on the eastern edge, slightly elevated to avoid water pooling. I dropped my pack and took a slow walk around the perimeter, checking for hazards. No widowmakers hanging overhead, no poison ivy, no animal scat indicating recent bear activity. The site was clean. I set up my tent, staked it down, tossed my sleeping bag and pad inside, hung my bear canister from a sturdy branch about 100 feet from camp, using the proper technique. 12 feet off the ground, 6 feet from the trunk, too high for bears to reach, too far from the tree for them to climb out and grab it. Gathered firewood, dead branches, nothing green, all dry enough to burn clean. Built a small fire in the stone ring and got it going, with a few handfuls of dry leaves and a ferro rod. By the time I had water boiling for my freeze-dried meal, the sun was setting. The temperature dropped fast. I pulled on my fleece mid-layer and sat on one of the logs, watching the sky turn from blue to orange to deep purple. Stars started appearing. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. No light pollution up here. Just pure darkness and pure stars. I ate my dinner. Some kind of chicken and rice thing that all tastes the same out of the package but hits different when you're on a mountain. Brewed instant coffee in my titanium mug. Sat by the fire and just existed. This is why I hike solo. Not because I don't like people, but because sometimes you need to be alone with your thoughts. No phone notifications, no work emails, no small talk. Just you and the mountain and the fire. I checked my watch periodically. 7:15 p.m., 8:30 p.m., 9:45 p.m. The fire burned down to coals. I added a few more pieces of wood, not enough to make it rage, but enough to keep it going. The temperature was probably in the mid-30s now. Cold, but not unbearable. My breath came out in little clouds. I decided to stay up until 11, then call it a night. I'd be up at dawn, pack out early, maybe hit a diner in North Creek for breakfast before driving home. At 11:47 p.m., I heard the drums. At first I thought it was my imagination, or maybe my pulse in my ears, but no, it was definitely drums. Deep, rhythmic pounding coming from somewhere north of my camp. Not close, but not far either. Maybe a quarter-mile away. Boom, boom, boom. Steady, ceremonial. Like a heartbeat, I stood up, listening. Then I heard the chanting, multiple voices, low and guttural, speaking or singing in a language I didn't recognize. The sounds rose and fell, layered over the drumming, creating this hypnotic, unsettling rhythm. I grabbed my headlamp and clicked it on. Who the hell would be up here at midnight on a Wednesday in late October, drumming and chanting? Maybe another camper? Some kind of weird ritual thing? College kids messing around? But the sound was too organized, too intentional. I checked my watch. 11:52 p.m., and that's when I remembered the ranger. I'd passed him around 4:15 p.m. on my way up. Older guy, maybe 60 or 65, wearing what looked like a vintage park ranger uniform. The old-style green pants and tan shirt with patches on the shoulders. The uniform looked authentic but worn, like it had been in service for decades. He'd been descending the trail, and we'd exchanged the usual hiker greeting. "Afternoon," he'd said. "Hey, how's it looking up top? Clear. Good weather." He'd paused, studying me. "You planning to camp overnight?" "Yeah." Summit clearing. His expression had changed. Not quite alarm, but something close to it. Concern, maybe. Or warning. "Be off the mountain by midnight," he'd said. "That's not a suggestion." I'd laughed, assuming he was joking or being overly cautious. "Why? Weather supposed to turn? October 30th, he'd said. Like that explained everything. "Just trust me. Midnight." He'd continued down the trail before I could ask any follow-up questions. I dismissed it at the time. Figured he was just a superstitious local, or maybe he knew something about wildlife activity I didn't. Bears get more aggressive before hibernation, that kind of thing. But now, standing in the dark at 11:52 p.m., listening to drums and chanting echoing through the forest, his words came back with uncomfortable clarity. "Be off the mountain by midnight, October 30th. I looked toward the north side of the summit, where the sounds were coming from, through the trees. I could see light, firelight, flickering orange glow against the darkness. A big fire, much bigger than my campfire. The kind of fire you'd build for a group or ceremony. The drumming got louder. The chanting rose in volume and intensity. Every instinct told me to stay at my camp, mind my own business. Let whatever was happening out there happen without me. But I'm human, and humans are curious and stupid. I grabbed my headlamp, made sure my knife was clipped to my belt, and started walking toward the firelight. The forest at night is a different place. Even with a headlamp, you're moving through a tunnel of light surrounded by absolute darkness. Every shadow could be a tree, or a bear, or a cliff edge. Every sound is amplified. Every step feels like trespassing. I moved slowly, trying to be quiet, stepping around dry branches and piles of leaves. The drumming grew louder with every step. The chanting became clearer. Not words exactly, but sounds. Guttural, rhythmic, primal. I got within maybe 100 yards and stopped behind a thick spruce tree. From there, I could see them. A clearing I didn't know existed. Bigger than my campsite, maybe 70 or 80 feet across. In the center was a massive bonfire, flames reaching 15 feet high, throwing wild shadows across the surrounding trees. And around the fire were figures, 10 of them, maybe 12. It was hard to count because they kept moving. They were dancing. No, not dancing. Moving. Circling the fire in this synchronized, fluid pattern that didn't look entirely human. Their movements were too smooth, too coordinated, like they were connected by invisible strings, and they were wearing masks, animal masks. I could see a deer skull, bleached white, with antlers still attached. A bear skull, massive and heavy-looking. Wolf pelts draped over heads with the snouts hanging down. Some kind of bird skull. Maybe a vulture or a hawk. More deer. More wolves. They were dressed in dark clothing. Maybe robes. Maybe just layers of fabric. Hard to tell in the firelight. The drumming was coming from 3 of them who sat at the edge of the clearing, pounding on what looked like large drums made from hollowed logs. The chanters were the ones circling the fire. Their voices rose and fell, creating harmonies that shouldn't have been possible with human vocal cords. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't some college kids messing around. This was something else. Something old. Something that didn't want to be witnessed. I checked my watch. 11:58 p.m. I should leave. I should turn around, go back to my camp, pack my tent, and get the hell off this mountain. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. That's when one of them stopped moving, the figure wearing the deer skull. It stopped mid-step, perfectly still, while the others continued their pattern around the fire. Then it turned its head toward me, not toward the trees in general, toward me, directly at me. I held my breath. The deer skull tilted slightly, like it was studying me. Then the others stopped, all of them, simultaneously. The drumming stopped, the chanting stopped. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. And then, one of them screamed. Not a human scream, not an animal scream. Something in between. A sound that hit my spine like an electric shock and made every muscle in my body lock up in pure terror. Then they started running toward me, all of them, moving impossibly fast, weaving between trees, closing the distance. I ran. I crashed through the underbrush, not following the trail, just running blind in what I hoped was the direction of my camp. My headlamp beam bounced wildly, showing me flashes of trees and rocks and nothing useful. Behind me, I could hear them. Footsteps, branches snapping, that horrible screaming, closer now, layered with sounds that might have been laughter or might have been something worse. I didn't look back. Couldn't look back. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. My pack bounced against my back, throwing off my balance. I saw my campsite ahead, the dying embers of my fire, the pale shape of my tent. No time to stop, no time to grab my gear. I kept running, downhill now, toward the trail, toward the parking lot, toward anywhere that wasn't here. That's when I noticed the forest was wrong. The trees looked different. The underbrush was thicker. The air smelled different, colder, sharper, like deep winter instead of late October. I glanced down at the ground and saw frost on the leaves, crystals of ice catching my headlamp beam. But it was October. It was supposed to be in the 30s tonight. Cold, but not freezing. I kept running. The ground under my boots felt harder, frozen. I could see my breath now in thick, heavy clouds, not the little wisps from earlier. This was December breath, January breath. Behind me, the footsteps were getting closer. I risked a glance back. The figures were maybe 30 feet behind me, moving through the trees like shadows, animal skulls reflecting my headlamp, arms reaching with hands that looked wrong, too long, too thin, tipped with something that caught the light like claws. Ahead of me, I saw ice on the branches. Ice. In October. I burst through a thicket and suddenly there was nothing in front of me. I skidded to a stop at the edge of a riverbank. Sentinel Creek. I knew this creek. It crossed the trail about a mile below the summit. In October, it should be low, maybe a foot deep, easy to cross on stepping stones. But this wasn't October Creek. This was a roaring, swollen torrent of water. The creek had become a river, churning white water crashing over rocks, ice forming at the edges where the current was slower. This was November water. December water. Snowmelt that shouldn't exist yet. I spun around. The figures emerged from the trees. 10 of them. Maybe more. The deer skull in front, antlers silhouetted against the moonlight. The bear skull to its left, wolf pelts and bird skulls and things I couldn't identify. They stopped about 10 feet away from me, just stood there. Watching, the deer skull tilted its head again, and I heard a voice. You were warned. It was a human voice. Male. Old. Coming from behind the skull mask. You were told to be gone by midnight. I looked at my watch. 12:03 a.m. What? What do you want? My voice came out hoarse, shaking. The deer skull took a step forward. You're between now. Between October and November. Between 1 year and the next. You shouldn't be here. I'll leave. I'll go right now. Too late. You watched. You saw. Now you're part of it. The others started moving closer. Slow, deliberate steps, forming a semicircle around me. I looked at the river behind me. The water was rushing fast. Too fast. I'd drown, or freeze, or both, but maybe I'd make it. Maybe the current would carry me downstream, far enough to escape whatever this was, or I could stay and let them take me. Back to the fire, back to the clearing, back to wherever they existed between October and November. The deer skull was 5 feet away now. I heard drumming again, faint, distant, echoing inside my own skull. 3 seconds, that's all I had. Jump or get caught. Drown or disappear. I jumped. The cold hit me like a physical blow. Every nerve in my body screamed. The water was so cold it felt like burning. Like acid. Like nothing I'd ever experienced. I went under immediately. The current grabbed me, spun me, slammed me into something hard. A rock, maybe. I felt pain in my shoulder, my hip, my head. Water filled my nose, my mouth. I tried to breathe and inhaled liquid. I couldn't tell which way was up. Couldn't see. Couldn't hear. Couldn't think. Just tumbling, drowning, freezing. My headlamp was gone. My pack was pulling me down. I tried to shrug it off, but my arms weren't working right. Everything went black. I woke up to daylight. Bright, cold, painful daylight stabbing through my eyelids. I was lying on my side on a gravel bank. My clothes were soaked. My entire body was shaking uncontrollably. I tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through my ribs, my shoulder, my left leg. Everything hurt. I managed to sit up, coughing water out of my lungs, spitting mud. I had no idea where I was. The river was behind me. Calmer here, wider, flowing steadily through a valley. Mountains rose on both sides. I could see the trail, or trail, about 50 feet up the bank. I checked my watch. The face was cracked. Water had gotten inside. The hands were frozen at 11:58 p.m. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out, dead, completely waterlogged. Wouldn't even turn on. I tried to stand and almost collapsed. My legs felt like rubber. My boots were still on, somehow, but one of them had a hole torn in the side. I was hypothermic. I knew that. I needed to move, needed to get warm, needed to find help. I staggered up the bank toward the trail. Everything looked wrong. The trees were different. The trail markers were old, really old. Some of them were so faded I couldn't read them. I followed the trail downhill because that's what you do when you're lost. Downhill leads to water. Water leads to civilization. Eventually, I walked for what felt like hours. The sun was high overhead. Mid-morning, maybe. Or afternoon. I couldn't tell. My teeth wouldn't stop chattering. My hands were white and numb. Finally, I saw something familiar. A trail junction. A wooden sign with arrows pointing to different destinations. Old military trail. 2.4 miles to trailhead. I followed it. The trail was empty. No other hikers. No sounds except my own footsteps and my labored breathing. Eventually, I saw the parking lot through the trees. I almost cried with relief. I stumbled into the gravel lot and immediately saw my truck. It was covered in frost. Thick white frost on the windshield, the hood, the roof. Like it had been sitting overnight in freezing temperatures. There was a piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. I pulled it out with numb fingers. A parking ticket. Vehicle abandoned in State Park overnight. Violation of park regulations. $150 fine. Date issued November 6th, 2024. I stared at it. November 6th. I'd started this hike on October 30th. I looked at the date again, hoping I'd misread it. November 6th. I'd been on the mountain for one night. One night, but according to this ticket, 7 days had passed. I walked around to the driver's side door, fumbled with my keys, somehow still in my pocket, and unlocked it. The inside of the truck smelled stale, cold, like it had been closed up for days. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed, struggled, almost died. The battery was weak, but it started. I turned the heat on full blast and sat there, shaking, trying to process. 7 days. Where had I been for 7 days? I remembered one night. The hike up, the campfire, the drumming, the chase, the river. Nothing after that until I woke up on the gravel bank. One night, 7 days. I put the truck in gear and drove. The roads were empty. The trees looked wrong, more bare than they should be, like more time had passed than just a week. I drove until I hit the main highway, then followed signs to North Creek. The town was small. One main street, a few shops, a gas station, a general store. I parked in front of the general store and got out. I must have looked like hell because the woman behind the counter actually gasped when I walked in. "Jesus, are you okay?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "You need me to call someone? You look like you've been. What day is it?" I managed to croak out. She blinked. "November 6th, Wednesday. What time?" 1:30 in the afternoon. "Oh, you need to sit down. You're soaking wet. I need water. And food." She grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler and a protein bar from the rack, then waved me off when I tried to pay. "Just sit down before you fall down." I sat on a bench outside the store and drank the entire bottle of water in 30 seconds. Ate the protein bar in 4 bites. My hands were still shaking. The woman came out with a blanket and draped it over my shoulders. "You been out in the woods?" I nodded. "How long?" "I don't know." She studied me. "You need to call the ranger station. You look like you've been missing. Can I use your phone?" She brought me a cordless phone from inside. I called the number for the Adirondack Park Ranger Station and explained, as best I could, what had happened. Went hiking October 30th. Encountered something. Ended up in the river. Woke up today. The ranger who answered said he'd send someone to meet me in North Creek. 20 minutes later, a park ranger truck pulled up. The ranger who got out was in his 40s, clean-shaven, wearing a modern uniform, not the vintage one from the hiker I'd passed on the trail. His name was Sergeant Hale. He took my statement, asked a lot of questions. Where exactly did I camp? Did I see anyone else? What happened before I ended up in the river? I told him most of it. The hike, the campsite, the sounds, the fire. I left out the part about the figures in animal masks and the time slipping. That part sounded insane even to me. Hale listened, taking notes. "So you're saying you went up October 30th for an overnight trip, and you just Lost track of time? I lost a week, I said. I don't know how. Mr. Bridger, we had a search team looking for you. Your truck was reported abandoned on November 2nd. We sent teams up the old military trail. Couldn't find any trace of you or your camp. My camp should still be there. Summit clearing. My tent. My bear canister. Everything. We checked the summit clearing. Nothing there. That's impossible. I set up a tent. I had a fire. Maybe you were on a different peak. These mountains all look similar. I know where I was. Hale closed his notebook. Look, I'm not saying you're lying, but you've been through something traumatic. Hypothermia can cause confusion, memory loss. It's possible you fell, hit your head, and wandered around for a few days before making it back. For a week, it happens more than you'd think. I wanted to argue, but what was the point? I couldn't explain it myself. We'll send someone up to check your campsite again, Hale said. In the meantime, you should see a doctor. Get checked out. What about the other ranger? I asked. The one I passed on the way up. Older guy, wearing an old uniform. He warned me to be off the mountain by midnight. Hale's expression changed. Just slightly. A flicker of something. Recognition. Maybe. Or discomfort. What did he look like? 60s. Maybe. Gray hair. Old-style ranger uniform. Like from the 70s. He was very specific about being off the mountain by midnight on October 30th. Hale was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We had a ranger named Walter Sims who worked the Sentinel Range back in the 70s. Disappeared October 30th, 1976. Search teams looked for him for 2 weeks. Never found a trace. No body. No gear. Nothing." My chest tightened. And hikers still report seeing him sometimes. Around October 30th. Always says the same thing. Be off the mountain by midnight. Some kind of residual thing. Ghost, I guess, if you believe in that. I don't believe in ghosts. Neither do I, Hale said. But I believe something weird happens up there on October 30th. I've heard too many reports. Lights. Sounds. People seeing things they can't explain. And every few years, someone disappears. Most of them come back eventually. But they're different. Changed. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know what you saw up there. And I don't know where you were for a week. But my grandfather used to tell me this about the old mountains. He said they remember things. And some nights, when the conditions are right, they show you what they remember. Old ceremonies. Old rituals. Things that happened long before we built trails and parking lots. You think I saw something from the past? I think you saw something. Whether it was past, present, or something else, I don't know. But I'll tell you what my grandfather told me. If you ever encounter something in these mountains that doesn't make sense, don't try to understand it. Just leave. Because the mountains don't owe you an explanation, and they sure as hell won't give you one. He drove me back to my truck. Before I got out, he handed me his card. If you remember anything else, call me. And Mr. Bridger, stay off the old military trail, especially around October 30th. I drove home to Albany. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Mail piled up on the floor under the mail slot. 7 texts from my brother asking where I was and if I was still alive. Missed calls from work. I took a long, hot shower. Shaved off the beard that had somehow grown in over 7 days I couldn't remember. Looked at myself in the mirror. I looked older. Not by much, but different. Tired. Worn down. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those figures in animal masks. The drumming. The chanting. The moment I jumped into the river and everything went black. Where was I for 7 days? What happened during that time? Was I unconscious by the river? Was I wandering through the forest with no memory? Was I somewhere else entirely? Trapped in whatever space exists between October and November? I don't have answers. My gear is gone. The park rangers went back up to the summit clearing and found nothing. No tent, no bear canister, no trace I'd ever been there. My emergency beacon was never activated. My phone is ruined. My watch stopped at 11:58 p.m. and won't start again, even with a new battery. I keep it anyway. A reminder, I don't hike solo anymore. Don't go to the Adirondacks. Don't camp overnight. People at work ask me where I went for a week. I tell them I took some personal time. They don't push. My brother asks if I'm okay. I tell him I'm fine. He doesn't believe me, and sometimes, late at night, I hear drumming, faint, distant, like it's coming from very far away, or from inside my own head, and I wonder if I really escaped that night, or if some part of me is still up there, running through those woods, caught between October and November, forever. So here's what I learned. If a ranger warns you to be off a mountain by a specific time, listen. Don't ask why. Don't test it. Just leave. Because some warnings aren't about weather or wildlife. They're about things that happen when time forgets how to move forward. And if you're up there when it happens, you might not come back the same, or you might not come back at all. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever lost time in a way you couldn't explain, leave a comment below. Share your experience. Let me know I'm not losing my mind. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about the things that exist in the spaces between what we know and what we can't explain, hit that subscribe button, because I've got more stories. And trust me, they don't get easier to tell. Stay safe out there. And if you're planning a hike on October 30th, maybe pick a different date.